As someone who has waited nearly a decade for this game to come out, I have to say, this was pretty disappointing. I had high hopes for this game, and I was expecting it to blow the first No More Room in Hell game out of the water. I even thought that this game could have solidified itself as one of the best zombie titles on the market. Obviously, I was wrong. Very wrong. As always, I'd like to start off with the positives. I'm sure you've already seen the countless negative reviews on the Steam store page, but what about the positives? What did this game do right? Well, one thing that I definitely liked is the fact that you can now spawn solo, rather than spawn with your friends at the start of the match in the first game. I think the idea of spawning alone and being forced to gear up and complete objectives, while also searching for your team in this big open map, is a great change. And honestly, it feels like a journey, because at first, you're wandering through the forest and fighting zombies solo until you eventually run into a teammate. Then you're playing a bit more, completing some more objectives until you find another solo player on the other side of town. Now you have a small group, and you'll notice that, of course, the game becomes much easier since you're able to clear hordes of zombies. And then later in the game, you run into another small group of survivors, and you join forces to form this one big squad, and assuming all 8 players are still alive, you stand a much greater chance for the finale. It's hard to describe, but I guess the best way to put it is, well, I guess it gives you a sense of hope, you know? Because at the beginning, you feel this sense of dread and despair as you're thrown into a map filled with zombies with no allies in sight. But as you gear up, complete objectives, and unite with survivors, or, well, responders as they put it now, you can actually feel like you're progressing. Especially if you get a good lobby. If you get matched up with people who stick together and communicate, it makes for a great time. Even though the game suffers a lot in performance, and trust me, I'll get to that later, but I was honestly surprised by how good the graphics were relative to their budget. It's not amazing, but it's definitely serviceable. The gore is there as well, much more gore this time around. You know, you can blow zombies' heads off, or you can blow off their limbs, and sometimes they'll turn into crawlers. The gore system definitely feels a lot more dynamic in this game. I was genuinely impressed. I think they could go a little deeper with it, but as it stands right now, it's perfectly fine. You know, it would also be perfectly fine if you liked the video and subscribe to my channel if you're enjoying the content so far. That would be pretty cool too, I guess. But anyways, this is gonna be an unpopular opinion, but I actually don't mind the HUD in this game. When I first heard that this game was gonna have a HUD, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't too thrilled about it, but it's not nearly as intrusive as I thought it would be. I think it looks clean and nice. Maybe they should get rid of the waypoints and just leave the objective markers on the compass instead, like in the first game, but overall I think it's fine. It doesn't bother me too much. If anything, my biggest complaint would be the fact that they replaced the classic weapon wheel with a generic inventory menu. Now that was pretty disappointing. Another unpopular opinion, but I like the idea of permadeath. Although it is kinda artificial, it does help raise the stakes of every match. I can tell you that from my experience, knowing that one fatal mistake could cost me not only the game, but my entire character, it definitely influenced some of my decisions. As it stands right now, it doesn't matter too much because the level cap isn't really that high. I think it's like level 50 or 60 or something like that, but gaining levels is so absurdly easy. I think it only took me a few matches to get to that level. But if they revamp the progression system, I can see this permadeath thing having a lot of potential. Now with that out of the way, let's get to the things that I didn't like about the game, and boy, there's a lot of them. First, let's talk about the performance, which is easily the most egregious part of the game. The performance is flat out horrendous. The devs said that they're aware of the server issues and they're working on a fix, and to their credit, their hotfix did resolve some issues, but most of the problems persist. I can't tell you how many times I've been swiped or grabbed by zombies that were nowhere near me. I would watch as a zombie is getting ready to hit me, so I backpedal or step to the side to dodge the attack, but I still get hit from far away. It's utterly ridiculous. This makes melee combat extremely frustrating, and honestly, it's not even viable until you get a partner. Bashing a zombie's head in with a lead pipe isn't nearly as exciting as it sounds. In fact, it's boring and annoying because of how much the lag interferes with your attacks. A lot of the time, your hits won't even register, and this applies to both melee and guns. I understand that this game is in early access and is still being worked on, but if you're gonna release a game for $30, you should at least make sure your servers are functioning well. Making sure the game is playable is the least you could do for your paying customers. I was also disappointed by the lack of content. Again, I understand the game is in early access, but couldn't they at least have given us more than one map? I think it would have been nice if we had at least 2 or 3 maps. It would have helped a lot at sustaining the player base, which, by the way, already dropped dramatically in just a few days. I know that they'll add some more levels, but it just gets boring having to play the same map over and over again. There's only so much you can do. And not to mention that there are a lot of features missing. For example, the infection system. I know they plan on adding it down the line, but why wasn't it included in the first place? That was one of the most important aspects of No More Room in Hell. It's stuff like this that really makes the game feel bare bones, and at times I even forget that it's supposed to be a sequel. I want to go back to combat real quick, because other than the jankiness and the bugs, there are some other serious issues. The stamina system in particular is awful. I don't think it makes sense that your character is allowed to sprint and jump around infinitely, but a few swings at an enemy will tire you out. It doesn't make any sense actually. I don't know how the developers missed that glaring issue. And just to be clear, I'm not saying that you should be able to swing infinitely. That's not what I'm saying at all. I just want consistency. And I think I've already mentioned this earlier, but I hate how spongy the zombies are. It doesn't matter how many times you bash or shoot them, there's so many instances where the zombies just simply won't die. Like, look at this. This is honestly ridiculous. This is just one example of how horrible the melee combat is in this game. I understand wanting to make the zombies a threat, and you should occasionally ask yourself, how is he not dead yet? Especially in intense situations. But this happens all the time. In fact, it's one of the reasons why I hardly even use melee in this game. Because what's the point of using a melee weapon if it takes like 8 swings to kill an enemy, but if you take 1 or 2 hits, your health goes down drastically, and it's an incredibly inefficient use of your time and health, really. This game is just not very good, plain and simple. But just because it's bad now, it doesn't mean it will always be. This game is still in early access after all, so they still have some time to tweak and fix things. But I honestly believe that this game shouldn't have been released in the first place. It is way too bare bones for even an early access title. This needed to stay in the oven for several more months at the least. I hope they can turn it around though, because No More Room in Hell 2 has a lot of potential. If Torn Banner plays their cards right, it can still be one of the best zombie games right now. I mean, they already have the blueprint with the first No More Room in Hell, and all they have to do is see what made that game such a big success and build off it. So, should you get No More Room in Hell 2? The answer is no. Unless you're willing to put up with endless bugs, terrible performance, spongy enemies, and a gross lack of content for even an early access title, then I think you should stay away from this game. Stay away until they iron out the serious issues and drop the price, because I can tell you that as of right now, it is not worth $30. But if you want to know about a game that is worth every penny, then click or tap the screen. Trust me, you don't want to miss it.